Laza, what's up? Can you hear me now? Are we working technically? I was not aware that y'all couldn't hear me, but at least you got to see my smiling face before. Let me know if you can hear me. Clap once, clap twice. Say what's up in the chat. Can you hear? Yes, you can hear. And Steven's in the building. What's up? Mercury in retrograde is in the house, trying to stir stuff up. What's up with Miss Mercury in retrograde, Steven?
She's hurting us.
She try. I mean, no, she could never hurt us. She could never hurt us. She could try, but there's so much Castle Hill up in the building that, like, you know what I'm saying? She can't. Mercury in retrograde can't. We give props to
Hello.
you so you don't fuck with us in this next time. But like, we can't. Hi, gorgeous.
Hi, beautiful. How are you?
I'm chileando, you know what I'm saying? Trying to
Mm.
relax, you know what I'm saying? And just
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
be present with all these beautiful people in the chat and with you. I'm very dehydrated from all the crying and the emotionalisms of last night. Our lack of
Emotionalisms.
emotional. Bitch, you got me all up in there. Like, yeah, and then my therapist, Steven, canceled on me this morning. She
Ah.
rescheduled to Wednesday, so I wasn't even able to process like all of this. So now it's just like it's me and you, Papa.
Okay, well, let's do it.
uh,
I was a counselor back in the day, so let's do it. Let's jump in.
well, you caused this, Steven. Well, I mean, I'm being all like crazy and facetious, but no, I think there is no better way there's no other way I can start this, but by other than saying thank you. Thank you for the
Mhm.
past 3 years. Thank you for fighting to tell this story. Thank you for being a champion of so many of us who don't get heard. I think, we cheated, and I talked to him a little earlier. I don't think last night was no ordinary season finale. It wasn't a season finale. It was a breaking of a spell or a curse.
Mm.
I think so
Mm.
often, you know, um, you know, I to reference Paris is Burning. I mean, I could perform it as a monologue. I know every word by heart. I feel, but I can't. I always remember like having a weight on it, like just feeling just hurt and lost for those dreams that didn't happen. And the way you were able in the crew to be able to tell this story, you liberated the voices of so many and saved so many lives. And I think oftentimes like storytellers and creators, it's easy to take that for granted.
Mhm.
And I don't think we should ever take that for granted. So it's just like, thank you, thank you, thank you. I see a bunch of people saying thank you. So just thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. How are you feeling? Because
Thank
if
you.
I'm feeling this way, you are very motherfucking welcome. But if I'm on my, like, how are you? You just gave birth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk to
Uh,
us.
I'm good. I had a it's been such a long journey. So, for it to be at the end is one that I'm still processing.
Hmm.
You know, the characters have lived with me for so much longer than they have all of you. And the reality is once we know them and we love them. But I I came up with the first kernel of an idea in 2004. That was such a long time ago. So to be living with the world and these characters, to finally put it on paper in 2014, and now in 2021 to have the story be told and to have it be completed is it's very full circle for me.
Hmm.
And it's hard to say goodbye. Like I've actually been really good about the whole process. Filming, I was great. Editing, I was fine. We had our drive-in on Saturday, and we got to pre-screen the finale, and that was great. And yesterday, I watched it and I live tweeted with everyone, and I felt good. And then I woke up this morning, I had a full like breakdown, just like really cried it out. So
Yeah.
like
Well,
I think it's gonna come in waves.
but I mean, but that's the process of grief. It does come away and celebration. You know what I'm saying? And you use this word, ending. And I don't think it felt like an ending in the sense that like you know, with that last shot of Blanca, you know, walking down the street, and it's just like she represents so many, and you know that she's gonna be okay. You know what I'm saying? And that journey is the beginning. So
Mm-hmm.
this is the
Mm-hmm.
beginning. You know what I'm saying? Like, yes, you sent, you know, your first baby to college, you know, but now this is like, you know, this is yeah, this is the beginning. So
No, I
um,
think what you're saying
just
is
so
so true. And that
yeah.
was that kind like I just want to say like that final shot was for really was for all of us, you know, all of us
Yeah.
people who have always been on the margins to say, you know, not just that the world keeps spinning, but that we all continue to move forward. Like we are beautiful, resilient, persistent people. And that for me is what that last shot represented. But I mean, you know this because we've talked about this privately. Like we grew up in the same neighborhood in the Bronx. Like we've walked down those cracked pavements many a time. And so there
And,
was something, no, go ahead.
and we fell and we've tripped and we've gotten back up on those
And we
steps.
sure
Yeah.
have, and
Yeah.
you know, stepped in mierda, and you know, and found dollar bills, and I like there was something to me really beautiful and cathartic about seeing Blanca walk down those same streets, you know.
Hmm. Talking about that and catharsis, you know, telling this story about a pandemic that devastated a marginalized community, you know, and shooting 2 seasons, and then you're about to start the third season, and then boom, you're shut down by a pandemic that
Hmm.
devastates a marginalized community. You know, we talk about what is like, what did you learn, when production got stopped, but then how did that inform you as a storyteller telling this story?
You know, I think that what the pandemic has done for us, and this is outside of my work on Pose, is it's forced all of us to reassess the ways that we all show up for one another,
Mm.
you know, and like what is the value of your community? You know, I think that I've had a lot of people asking, you know, about the timing of Pose being released. Every year we've always come out in June, and June is Pride Month, and you know, what are the connections? You know, there are very obvious connections. You know, this is a show that censors queer and trans people, but uh, I think that there's a different tenor this year because we all haven't seen each other, you know, and so to now be able to connect with people is really beautiful. And at least my experience throughout filming this season in the midst of a pandemic was who are your ride or dies? Like, who are the people who really are going to show up for you, who are going to be at your side, who are going to hold it down for you? And I think, you know, for 3 seasons, we have primarily the same team. And
Hmm.
so there was something really beautiful about in the middle of all this loss and grief that we all as a family came back together, cast and crew, and said there's an importance and an urgency to the story. It needs to be told. And so we're just going to show up for each other to do that.
But that's when you know family's real. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Because that's what family does. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like, and that's how you,
absolutely.
and not every, you know this, not every show is like that, Steven. Do you know what I'm saying? So
Mm.
that just
Hmm.
goes to to speak to the magic that you all created. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? Like,
yeah.
and this is why it's just like I don't want to sound like all dramatic, but it really is so special. And the reason why people are feeling how they're feeling is because all of that, the community, the family, all of that beauty that you all shared with each other, that translated, and we felt
Yeah,
that, and we felt
I'm glad.
married, and to these characters, and like that is what art can do. The great art can do. You know what I'm saying? And television, the power of TV. So it's just like, again, it all goes back, to thank you, because this could not
Mm.
have been easy. You know what I'm saying? Because everything was thrown at you, especially in this last season with a pandemic. What I what I'm curious about is, you had how many 126? What's that famous story? Like, you had
Whew,
126 meetings before you got to
66,
oh,
166.
166. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Boom, boom. Because you are one of my favorite, advice givers. You are just a wealth of knowledge. You're one of the smartest people I know, and I love because you be dropping them gems. Now you do. Do you remember the first time we ever spoke, and I saw you on a panel, and I asked you this question, and I'll never forget your answer. I was feeling very Miss Sophia in the dinner scene in The Color Purple because I was having this project and I felt like I wasn't being seen, and like all these white, people were telling me how great the project was, but I don't know what to do with it. I can't say I don't get it. And I asked that question, how do you handle that? And you were like, you keep going until you find the people who do get it.
Mm.
And I was like, yeah. So my question to you is, what do you tell, going back with all this wealth of information that having had this experience for the past 3 years, what do you tell Steven right after his 165th meeting?
I tell him, when are you scheduling 166?
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I think that the truth is, it's interesting because like I've talked about that experience of like for 2.5 years going in and out of meetings and rooms and pitching the show and not finding people who wanted to invest in the story or me as the storyteller. And I think that there's a lot there. Like I think that story is much more complicated than it sounds. Like I know it makes a great soundbite. The truth is,
No,
like,
totally.
I have been working my ass off for a long time. You figure I went out and I started pitching this show in 2014, but like I made my first documentary short when I was 15 years old. I went to college for film, and then I took a break and I worked in higher education for almost 10 years. But, I went to UCLA, I worked on an MFA in screenwriting. Like I really put in the time and the effort. So, it's not like this real quick overnight success. It's like I had to work my ass off to get to that place. The other thing is that when I wrote Pose, it wasn't just me looking at, I want to have a career and I'm ready to break in. It was, I really threw the fuck down on that page with that first draft. You know what I mean? Like I knew that what I wrote was good and no one was going to tell me anything otherwise. And I think there's a big difference between like where Steven was at that point. And I was already, I should know, like I was in my mid 30s, like I was 35. That's the other thing, right? Is like I was an adult, I wasn't coming in as a kid. And so there was a lot of, there was an awareness for me, because I have a lot of people who ask those questions now. And it's and no shade, but it's like, if you're, not that you can't be an incredible writer in your early 20s or even in your teens, but the reality is like there's a lived experience that one has to have out in the world, and you have to work and be committed to your craft. And so by the time that I wrote that first draft of Pose, I had really worked on my craft and on my voice on the page. Like I knew I was ready, so I think there's the receiving no's. I don't think it impacted me as deeply for that reason, because I was like, no, I'm ready. Like I know this is good and I know I'm ready. And I should note that in the midst of all of that pitching, like I got staffed on a television show. I worked on a show on Freeform. Like I was developing other projects. So it's not like I wasn't still working. For me, those 166 meetings was just me going through the town and doing that thing that I said to you, which is looking for the right collaborators, and it just took 166 meetings to finally find the right people.
Yeah. And you found your community, you told this story. And then the other thing you were able to do was marry it to this intention. Because one of the things that, always talking, whenever you talk about the story, you're like, if you go back and watch the post, what does Blanca want? She wants to create her legacy. And everything was in service of that. And last night, you see that with the generations continuing. Was it ever? Did you ever find yourself? Because 3 years is a long time, especially when you're talking about a pandemic. Kind of, how did you always come back to it? Like, what is your kind of tool? Like, especially when you're getting notes from the studio or the production company or whatever. Like, it was again like how did you stay so deeply like rooted and grounded in your intention?
Hmm. Well, I think for me, the characters are always the compass.
Hmm.
It's the characters, and then whatever thematically is the story that I'm telling. So, uh, I know that my strength, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier about like having a sense of awareness. Like I know where my strengths lie as a storyteller. Like I am a family drama writer. Like that was sort of where my brand lived when I was working on my MFA. And so to me, the show always had to go back to that. Thematically, the show always had to go back to love. It had to go back to family. It had to go back to resilience. It had to be an aspirational show. Those were kind of like if we were putting words up on a wall to remind us, that was, that was the streets. Those were the streets we were living in. And then the characters just talk to you, so the characters tell you what they want their story to be. That sounds very writerly, but like you spend so much time with them and you get to know them. And so, it's difficult for me to sit at the page and write something that feels out of pocket for those characters because I know them so well.
Mm, mm.
And so it's like, yeah, that's not a choice. Like you can be talking in the room and it's like that's not a choice that Blanca or Pretel or Electra would make. That's not who they are at their core. And so for me it was always crafting narrative always had everything to do with like the characters and then the themes.
But that's what I'm saying. Yeah, and everything was always in service of that original theme, that original intention. Like so often times you see shows that like pull stunts that kind of take you away, and it's like you never
Mm,
saw that. You never saw that with Pose. You know what I'm saying? Like it was
yeah.
grounded in that intention, grounded in that love. And I think sometimes when I hear you talk, I'm like I don't want you to throw that away. Like, do you realize how special you are? You know what I'm saying? Like that. No, but like for real. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
it just it shines through on the page. And for me it's just like when you like I started my career as an actor, like reading a lot of and the majority of stuff I see is not good. You know what I'm saying? So when you see something that like when you have that first good steak, you know what I'm saying? You're like, oh I want that. I see some questions in the question box. Please, if you do have a question, throw it into that little the question box, not the chat. We are going to get to y'all in a few. You know, I want to talk about joy. I want
Okay.
to talk about joy
Let's do it.
because let's. What I don't know. I want to talk about joy because one of the other things I will always carry with me is that you like enjoy every moment of your journey. And I think
Mm,
sometimes coming from where we come from, like it's really easy to like kind of forget like the steps. Do you know what I'm saying? What does joy mean
hmm
to you? You know what and like what do you do
Um,
to like yeah.
uh, that's a great question. I mean, I think that for me, joy is being centered. Joy is about being kind to myself, being okay with not knowing.
Hmm.
I'm a Virgo, so I'm always 10 steps ahead of myself. I'm very hard on myself. I'm always judging myself. I put a lot of pressure on myself. And so I think for me, it's sometimes very difficult to find the joy or be centered in the joy, um, because I'm so in my head about everything and I'm so quick um, be rooted and grounded in the neuroses. And so joy for me is like letting it all go and being comfortable in all of my complications and in all of my messiness.
Yeah.
And so in doing all of that, like joy for me is it's having this conversation with you. Joy is those moments when I'm just taking a nice hot shower. Joy is laying on the sofa sometimes and not doing a damn thing because we deserve to luxuriate and we don't always have to be on the front
Right.
line doing the work. Joy
Right.
is going for a walk. Joy sometimes is eating shitty food. Um, like it's all of that. Joy is being in communion with my people. Joy is live tweeting every Sunday with
Yes.
everyone who's watching the show. For me, I just I think that we need to be uh derive joy from like everything that is around you. You know, like
Mm,
we're always surrounded by life. We're never not surrounded, you know,
hmm.
by everything that's happening in the world, whether even if you're alone, right? And so to me it's like it's taking a moment to take in everything that is around you. You know, I
Yeah.
think that that sometimes gets lost on us. We're so quick to look past everything as opposed to just being grounded and centered and present. But it took me, I'm 40, it took me a long ass time to get to that place to realize like, bitch, it's okay for you to just like stop and be centered and like take in what's in your immediate proximity.
Because we weren't taught that, Stephen. We were taught how to survive. Do you know what I'm saying? Like that was
Hmm.
the function as a kid growing up in the '80s. I come from so it's like it's weird that you actually have to take time to practice joy and make joy a practice because this
Hmm.
is the first time where you know what I'm saying. This is the first time
Yeah.
you're gonna end your first show or whatever this moment is. Like I told y'all, he be dropping the gems. I told y'all. No. So let's see some other questions that we got out here. Uh you know you had teased this the other day, so I want to ask this question. Are there going to be any spin-off shows about any of the characters on Pose? Is it going to be a Pose universe? I know you said something about hey a prequel or something
Yeah,
the other day.
I that here's the truth about it. Um I I love these characters. I love the world. I think that there are like I can see the spin-off um like other spin-off versions of the show, right? Like I can see that. I mean, we
Hmm.
ended the show with like a whole new Evangelista house. So
Yeah, yeah,
you could do a spin-off of them, you could jump ahead 15, 20 years, you
yeah.
know, you could go back
Go
in
to
time, which is something that people suggested like doing like early abundance. Like the options are there. I think the thing is for me, and this is me being completely selfish, but as a storyteller, I need I just would need the show to explore new themes, you know? So
hmm.
the reality is like, and outside of family, but the narrative is grounded in what was happening sociopolitically in New York in the 80s and 90s, connected to these black and brown queer and trans characters who are part of ballroom, surviving in the face of the HIV/AIDS epidemic and the crack epidemic. So there's like very specific themes to tease out of that narratively. And so I think if we're going to create another show, it's like I need it to be something else because it isn't just going to be, you know, characters that you know and love or new characters who are performing in the balls, right? It's like
Hmm.
what else is happening in their world outside of that? And I think it's like we've explored all of that on Pose. And so I'm like, what's the new narrative? What are the new themes to explore through those characters existing in the exact same world? And I think, you know, eventually I'm sure I'll land on something. And then if I do, perhaps that'll be the moment for me to say, oh, I think that there's another show there. But
But
at
in
the
the
moment,
meantime, you have
to me, it was going to feel rote. It's
fair,
just going to
and
feel
you
like
have
we would be,
so
it's the reason why the show is ending after 3 seasons, frankly. You know, it's like, there was a very specific story that I wanted to tell, and I felt that I told that. And I was like, if I keep pushing it on, at a certain point, the audience, you know, just imagine like fourth season, fifth season, sixth season, the audience, even if you love the characters, you're gonna be like, girl, you're just telling me the same story over and over again,
yeah,
you know?
yeah, end on that high or like leave on that high. Yeah. And plus you have
Yeah,
so many more stories to tell. Like, you know, you the real deal, Papa. Like
yeah.
we get treated to the next thing. Um
And here's the thing is
it,
like, can I just say, because I really truly love our audience and I appreciate every human who's ever um, come in to watch the show and has spent time with us and with our characters. And the reality is like, I just don't, I think that especially Black and Latin people and Asian people, I think that we all historically in film and television, like we've just not been treated like we're intelligent. Like, I think
At
we as
all.
audience members have just been taken for granted. And my thing was like, I don't want to do that to our audience. Like, I know that like you love these characters and you would love to see them go on and on for many, many seasons. But my thing was like, yeah, I'm not gonna do that. I'm
Mm.
not gonna treat my people, our audience, in that way. It's like, no, we're good. Like the story I want to tell, I've told. I'm not gonna just create bullshit
Yeah.
television or like, a crappy season just cause. It's like they like black and brown and Asian audiences deserve more, And so
Yeah.
for me, I feel like all of the people who are upset by the fact that the show is ending, like my hope is that that'll then just be an indicator to the industry and all of the gatekeepers who more often than not are white, that they'll say, shit, we need to be telling more of these stories.
Hmm.
Obviously there's a need. So let's go out and find more content creators. Let's tell more story.
And that's it right there. And again, that's what makes you so special because another person would have been worried about that check. And it's just like, no, I'm good. Like having the power to say no and to be like, nah, I'm gonna go out on my terms.
Hmm.
That you a gangster, Steven. Straight up. There's nothing more castle than that. Real quick, were there any storylines that you wish you could have done on Pose that like kind of didn't make it?
Hmm. I don't know if there were specific storylines that I wanted to tell. I think that like there were storylines that had different variations, like
Mm.
I think that I guess that's not true. I'm gonna give you three answers. One is that like I think one story that I definitely wanted to lean all the way into that I didn't fully get to was about gentrification.
Mm.
Like I was very, there was a piece in the New York Times a few years ago about the South Bronx, and like it being sort of reframed as sobro, and
Piano
I'm
District.
yeah, and I'm really fascinated by the ways that like people of color are constantly being displaced, and we're not necessarily having those conversations, and anyway, so all that to say, that was one that I really would have loved to have dug in through the show, and we just could never really find the place for it, and so that was one. And then I think in terms of this isn't necessarily like story, these I think are just more like elements of story, but
Hmm.
two things that I always really wanted to accomplish on the show, and we just never got to do it for a multitude of reasons, was one is I always wanted there to be a block party on the show, and we never ever got to do
Yeah.
that, which uh, it's like a little bit of a bummer. And then the other thing that I always wanted to see on the show, and again, never happened. This is probably the one that hurts me the most. It was like
Mm.
every season, I always wanted to do one scene on a subway. I was like, there's just something about New York, especially in the 80s. I know you remember like those trains were like, they were metal. There was no damn air. They were funky. There was graffiti everywhere, but it was like, it's so quintessentially New York. And when I think about my childhood, I always immediately think back to being on those old ass trains. And
Yeah.
anyway, so that for me was like that was a sadness that I always wanted to do a scene there, and I never got to do that. So
You will eventually, Steven. Maybe not more.
I have to at some point.
It's like,
I have another pilot that I wrote that takes place in 1984, and it's in New York City. And
yeah.
so I'm like, this heifer is gonna put people on a goddamn train at some point.
That's it. All the trains. It doesn't matter which ones. Like the two in the. I think someone tweeted that yesterday. It was like, why did Christopher, the doctor? He's like,
Uh-huh.
why do you
Yeah.
move into Blanca's apartment? I was like, he didn't want to be on that 2 and 5 train. I was like, I was like, the 2 and 5 train is not the move in 1996. You know what I'm
Also,
saying?
that's love. And like people were like, "Oh, he's a doctor. Like, why did he move into her apartment?" First of all, as you recall, in episode 5, Miss Electra came into that railroad apartment and she straight up just changed it, right? Like she revamped
Yeah.
it, and the house is cute now. That's number
Yeah.
one. Number two is when you love somebody, it doesn't matter where the hell you live because you're in love with them. You
And
know?
no shade. He's a doctor. He is very smart. In 1996, you probably paid like $200 for that apartment. Hassa probably covered half of it. Dude,
Hello?
he got medical bills, medical school to pay for. He ain't stupid.
No, he's
He's
not
like,
stupid at
no,
all.
at
Listen,
all.
I'm pay my
Hold on.
cute $200 rent and keep it
That's
pushing.
it. And keep it moving. That's it. See, that's how you know. All right. What's next for Steven? Like, and actually, let me reframe that. We got Heights coming out this week. We got Love Victor. We have all of this, content about, stories like us, what are you most excited about? And like,
Mm,
yeah, and not specifically project oriented, but like, how do we continue this to make this more of a movement? You know what I'm saying? Because the
yeah.
realities of, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Hmm.
what is
I
next?
love I love that framing of the question. I think the thing that I'm most excited for is just it's all the possibilities,
Yeah.
because the reality is, I said this on Saturday. Oh my God, I'm not gonna cry. I said this on Saturday when I was at the drive-in for the finale. I was talking about like growing up as a boy and like not seeing myself reflected back on
Hmm.
screen, and in many ways still not seeing that now. And the thing that I said was, the show, me and Janet as executive producers and directors, the entire cast, especially all of the Black and Latin and Afro-Latin trans women, like we're all possibility models. When I was growing up as a kid, like we didn't have that. Like there was nobody, like when you and I were growing up in the Bronx, like, going to 38, or PS 130 or
One
whatever,
day.
you know what I mean? Like th- who was aspiring to be in Hollywood? Who There was no pipeline to get here, right? And if you're turning on this beautiful medium, this intimate piece of technology called the television, and you're not seeing yourself, like you can't even imagine being or doing a particular job or going to a particular place because we don't exist there. It's the equivalent of like watching sci-fi back in the day and all you ever saw were white faces. It's like if you don't see Black and brown and Asian people in space, it's like,
Hmm.
well, I guess we don't exist in the future. I guess we're not there. So similarly, it's like what the show has done is that it's now created it's now a possibility model, right? So there's all these young queer and trans people, there's all these young Black and brown people who now are saying, oh, I can do that too, from writing to directing to
Yes.
producing to acting. And so to me, that is the thing that I'm the most excited about outside of my own work, is just to see all the work that's going to come from everybody else. Like I think about all the young Stevens and all the young Dominics who are still living in housing projects in the Bronx and in Queens, and in places like Chicago and Atlanta, and like, what are they going to do? Like they're coming up in a time that's so different from us, and that makes
Yes.
me really excited.
But that is part of your legacy. And that's what I'm saying, going back to bring this full circle, is that is the breaking of the spell. That is because of you allow so many else to be. I remember going to see you in that like basement dingy WGA theater, and like I
Oh
made
yeah.
sure my ass got there because I wanted to see someone who looked like me. You know what I'm saying? Talk about a
Hmm.
story from where I come from. And like because of that, because of that piece of advice, it mattered. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like it so matters. Like,
Yeah.
and like that is why we have to continue to fight and tell these stories, because this shit is way deeper than other people could possibly understand. And I'm so
Yeah.
grateful that you get it, that you are surrounded by a community that gets it, that the people in the chat get it. Because that is how we elevate, and that is how we take shit to the next level for, baby Steven, for baby Dominic, for baby MJ, for baby Dominique, all of that, you
Well,
know.
and can I say, I think that is what this piece of our conversation is exactly the thing that was on my heart the entirety of not solely writing, but also directing last night's finale. Because truly, for me, the thing that was so important, like I know that, spoiler alert for anyone who's watching this and hasn't seen it yet, but like I think the important thing around like the loss of Prey had
Mm-hmm.
everything to do with, it wasn't for dramatic effect. It really was about giving a teachable moment to the audience, which
Mm-hmm.
is, this is the way that we Black and brown people and Asian folks, like this is the way that we have always shown up for each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like we've always shown the fuck up for one another in the face of adversity, when there's no support from this fraudulent government, and when we have nobody, standing up for us, when
Mm-hmm.
there's a lack of monetary resources because we live in this capitalist culture, and our people are getting killed by law enforcement because, you know, we don't believe in abolition. Like all of it, you know what I mean? It's like in the face of it all, we have always been our own heroes. We have
Mm-hmm.
always shown up for one another. And so to me, like that was the importance and that was the beauty of telling that story was like, yeah, you know, there were only going to be two people of color in this damn uh, uh, medical this pre-medical intervention, right? It was like only for white people, and pray tell making the decision to say that's not going to happen, not on my
Mm-hmm.
watch, not to my community, not to my people. And that to me was like that's what we have always done, you know, like that's not a new or revolutionary act, what the story
Mm.
that we told. We've always done that, we're still doing that now, you know.
Amen. Steven, you are a hero. You are my hero. I am so grateful for you. Um, oh my God, that tore me up. That tore me up as well. I'm torn up. You got. I kind of. I think that's where we end this. Yeah, I can't. You know, are you good with that? And like
Yeah, I feel
yeah.
good.
Yeah. I'm like that was a sermon.
I got on my soapbox, I'm sorry,
No,
but
but it's
yeah.
not a soap opera. Like that's the thing. It's like never apologize for that because like that is the truth. You know what I'm saying? And that's seeing him making that decision, making that sacrifice, going out in his glory. You know, by his terms. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
You know, he
Hmm.
is a hero.
Exactly. Exactly.
He
You
is.
know.
You know what I'm saying? He was like, y'all
Yeah.
motherfuckers not gonna get me. You know what I'm saying? He made the choice. You know.
Absolutely.
I love you, Stephen.
I love you. Thank you for everyone that's here too.
Yeah, thank you, everyone who is here. Thank you for rocking with us. If you want to see more DULCE, we got stuff coming up for y'all. Like I said, there's a lot of projects that are dropping right now, and we want to bring you these more of these conversations. If you want to check out some of the older conversations, you can go to the New York Latino Film Festival YouTube page and check out some hot ones as well as other amazing short content. And yeah, thank you so much. Love y'all. Love y'all. Love you, Stephen.
Love you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye everyone.
Bye.